Good morning and welcome to In Focus. I'm Dan Thomas. Thanks for waking up with me. It's a topic that's always in the news, but over the past few weeks we've seen the issues of homosexuality more and more in the news. Of course, locally, thousands flocked to our beaches to celebrate their sexuality over the past weekend. And recently, the nation stopped to observe the life and perhaps one of the most vocal critics of the homosexual lifestyle, Reverend Jerry Falwell. Few places will you find the two sides of the lifestyle debate face-to-face than right here in the Florida Panhandle. First, let's take a look back at how Falwell was remembered here in Pensacola.
Go back to the phones. Hi, Rick, it's your turn. You're on the radio.
On local talk radio, Falwell was remembered more for politics than for religion.
Well, how do you think he's going to be remembered?
He'll be remembered as a conservative leader.
Do you remember the Teletubby thing?
It was his way or the highway.
He said Tinky Winky may have been a transsexual because he was purple and carried a purse.
He didn't care what he was going against or who it went against it.
But at this church in Pensacola, Falwell is remembered as a mentor.
He was always gracious. He was always cordial, always willing to help in any way that he could. Most of the things that he said that are regarded as controversial, I probably agreed with.
Pastor Chuck Baldwin was part of the first graduating class at the university Falwell founded. He says Falwell was a major influence in the decision to start Crossroad Baptist here in Pensacola.
I made an appointment and saw him even before I decided to come here. I sat in his office, talked with him for nearly an hour. And we shared together the pros, the cons. How could I know it was God's will to come here?
Falwell's mix of politics and religion served as an inspiration to Baldwin, but he says the man was far more than just sound bites.
He brought so many people into a walk with God and an involvement in their country.
And as for the future?
Unfortunately, I don't see people on the horizon to take the helm of the leadership like we had with Jerry Falwell.
And we'll hear more from Pastor Baldwin in just a moment, but joining me now, Marjorie Cumpston, you're part of PFLAG in Pensacola. Explain to people what this group is.
Exactly. Our group is parents, families, and friends of lesbians, gays, bisexual, and transgendered persons. Mm-hmm. Most of us have children that are gay or lesbian. Mm-hmm. Our organization has a three-pronged purpose. First of all, to support families, and that's very important to me. No family should break up over this issue. Mm-hmm. So we support families while they're in a somewhat diverse society and sometimes adverse society.
Okay.
Then we do education to inform the public, and we do advocacy, which is what I'm doing right now.
All right. Also in the studio with us, Chuck Baldwin. Pastor Baldwin, you were, I guess a protege, you could say, of Reverend Falwell. Explain your history a little bit. We talked a little bit about that, but you were pretty close with the man.
I was privileged to be a part of the early days of what was then Lynchburg Baptist College. I was in the first complete graduating class in 1975. And back in those days, it was a small school. There was no, sprawling campus and thousands of students. It was a very small, almost family environment. Jerry and I became friends when the Moral Majority started in 1979. He asked me if I would be the executive director for the Florida Moral Majority, which I accepted. And I worked very close with him over the next 10 to 12 years. Traveled with him, went overseas with him, spoke with him at various meetings. He was in my church at least 4 different times. So we developed a pretty close relationship.
Yeah. Marjorie, I was wondering, we asked the question in the story we just saw of some of the radio callers answered the question. I want to ask you, how do you think Falwell will be remembered?
I think Falwell will be remembered as a politician, and a very good politician. Mm-hmm. He took a situation that he felt needed to be remedied, and he did that with the Moral Majority. And I think that that's what he will probably be remembered for.
How did you personally come to be involved in PFLAG?
I have 2 gay daughters.
What was it like for you? Falwell, some of the statements that he made saying that AIDS is a curse on society for tolerating homosexuality. You, of course, obviously very tolerant of it. What was it like for you to hear him saying those things in the public?
It's extremely hurtful. It's divisive, it's exclusive, and it's very difficult. It's very hard to hear these things.
Okay. Pastor Baldwin, I know that occasionally you found yourself parting ways with Falwell, but not maybe in the way that people might expect. Explain to me how you felt when you would hear him say those things.
Well, I agree with Jerry basically on his moral positions. I believe that God intended that sexual activity be confined to the marriage relationship between a man and a woman, and that anything beyond that is immoral. So I would certainly not disagree with Jerry's assessment that homosexuality and adultery, whether it be homosexuality or heterosexual adultery, is contrary to the laws of God. I don't disagree with that. My differences with Jerry had more to do with his perceived allegiance to the Republican Party, to George W. Bush in particular. I believe that we need to call what's right, right, and what's wrong, wrong, regardless of whether it's Democrat or Republican. So I took a more of a independent approach to politics in the last few years, which in that way I differed from Jerry slightly. But certainly when it comes to our basic understanding of morality and biblical truth, I would share agreement with Jerry on most of the issues that I can think of.
Now, at one point he'd made a statement after 9/11 that it was somehow a curse on the United States. I'm not saying it exactly the way he said it, but for tolerating, among other things, homosexuality. At one point he actually apologized for that, and how did you feel about that?
Yeah, I don't think tolerance was the word. That's not the word that I would use. I think that what he was trying to say, and I'd have to get the quote to see exactly what he did say, of course, but from my own perspective, I don't think it's tolerance that's the issue. I think it's promotion. Whenever society gets to the point of wanting to legitimize, even legalize, that which is contrary to the laws of nature, that is when it becomes offensive to most of us. It's not what people do in the privacy of their own homes. It's not. We're not trying to set up a theocracy where we have stormtroopers breaking down people's doors and interrupting sexual conduct in the privacy of one's own home. I'm not for that. I very much believe in the individual freedoms that we have as a constitutional republic, that we should honor those basic freedoms that we all have as American citizens. So I am not one that would subscribe to that kind of activity. But what we are saying is look, there are moral and social norms that society historically has always understood. And when we now would say, okay, we're going to break down those social and moral norms, we're going to, it's not just a matter of tolerating, I think we do that already. It's a matter of promoting and even legalizing and even forcing society to legitimize something that we know is illegitimate. And that is the point of contention that I would have.
Marjorie, you look like you want to get in there.
He just made a wonderful argument for same-sex marriage. Certainly, in the context of marriage is the place where sexual activity belongs. My daughter and her partner, who've been together for 8 years, cannot marry. And I'm sure there's sexual activity that goes on in that bedroom, and I would like them to have the right to marry. It's a very good argument for same-sex marriage. Anyway, this is very difficult for me because my belief system is very different than Chuck's. I respect him completely, but my belief system is different. I've had gay people in my house. I've had gay people in my friends' circles, and I work with a large group of them right now. These people are born this way. This is not a choice. Why would someone choose to live that way? So that they could be beaten to death and then have God hates faggots all over the funeral. Why would they choose that? They're not going to.
And we'll hear more from both of them just after this break. Stick around. Good morning and welcome back to In Focus. I'm Dan Thomas. This morning we're talking about homosexuality. We've been covering a few topics, the life of Reverend Falwell, and joining me are Pastor Chuck Baldwin and Marjorie Cumpston. Two very different viewpoints on the issue here, and I think when we're in our last break, we were just talking about your daughters. You have two gay daughters. You think that they should have the right to marry, and I'm going to get Chuck to respond to some of the points that she was making there.
Well, right, and I think what she was talking about in terms of homosexual marriage goes back to what I just said in the opening segment, and that is that what they're asking us to do by saying that is they're asking us as society to stamp society's approval upon what we perceive to be an immoral lifestyle. And that is where we have to, we have to draw the line. Whenever someone asks us to legitimize something that culturally, socially, morally, spiritually, for thousands of years has been regarded as immoral and socially unacceptable, that is when society has to draw the line and say, no, we can't do that. No more than we could ask heterosexual adulterers that would come to us and say, we want to be recognized under the laws of society as having privileges because we are adulterers or because we are fornicators, or pick out any other vice. The society has a responsibility to its children, to its posterity, to leave to them a sense, a semblance of morality that is universally accepted. And I think history is very clear on this point, that when it comes to family life, there is a moral standard of a man and a woman living together in marriage, bearing and raising children. After all, only heterosexuals can procreate. This is something that homosexuals can't do. As God intended a husband and wife together in marriage to bear children, to be able to further the human race. This is all a part of the marriage relationship. So this is where we differ. Again, she's asking that society put its stamp of approval upon this lifestyle.
She made a point that she doesn't think that homosexuality is a choice. Do you think it's a choice?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's a choice. And she said, why would they choose? I know it's a choice because I personally have been acquainted with scores, I might even could say hundreds, of former homosexuals and lesbians, men and women who were once homosexuals, who were once lesbians, who became free of that lifestyle and now are living normal heterosexual lives. So if I've never met a former black person or a former white person. This is to say that a person is born with homosexual lifestyle tendencies goes against science, and it goes against everything that we know that is true. This is truly a lifestyle choice. And so I vehemently disagree that they are born that way. If they were, then how come they're able to come out of that lifestyle? Or at least so many have.
I'm very opposed to reparative therapy. It's very dangerous. Do you remember years ago when we decided that all left-handed children should be right-handed? That's also Bible-based because of what's at the left hand of God the Father. And so we decided to change all these left-handed children, and it was extremely hurtful, extremely hurtful. Reparative therapy, American Psychological Association, the American Psychiatric Association, both say is very, very dangerous. You don't want to mess with that. You talked about the laws of nature. There's a recent book that explains that in every single species that we have studied, there are homosexual members of every species. This is not opposed to the laws of nature. This is what nature's about. And one little point with me is, my heterosexualism is not a lifestyle. It's my life. It's the way I look at the world. My daughter's homosexuality is not a lifestyle. It's their life. They see the world differently than I do. This is a very important difference. Very important. And yes, my daughters were born this way.
Okay, well, obviously she believes that, but I do not. And I think if you were to poll the vast, vast majority of the American people, they would agree with me that it is a chosen life. And yes, I have known and know today many former homosexuals, former lesbians, that are not harmed. They are living normal, happy lives. Many of them now raising children, living a normal heterosexual lifestyle. free from the burden. And you just alluded a minute ago, you said, why would they choose this lifestyle and the burdens of it and so forth? And they're living a life now free of those burdens, set free by the redemptive power of the Lord Jesus Christ when they accepted Him as Savior. And so these people are, I think, living proof that folks are able to break free from the chains of sin, whether it be homosexuality or adultery or fornication or whatever the amoral lifestyle might be. So again, I think that there's so many examples of people that have broken free, that are living a life now free of that, that we know that it's something that can be accepted, that can be rejected by the will and by the heart of man.
Go ahead.
Two things. First of all, no reparative therapy people that I have met have been able to maintain it for a lifetime. Now, the reason here that we're talking is we don't face the fact that sexual orientation is a continuum. Over to the right, the far right, is those that are completely heterosexual in every way. And I'm not talking about this little chunk over here that goes on in the bedroom. That's not what I want to talk about. Adultery, that has nothing to do with me. But I'm talking about people that are totally heterosexual. All of their acquaintances, all of their sexual partners, all of their friends are the opposite sex. I fall in here just a little bit in the middle. My sexual partner is obviously male, but some of my best friends are female. So I'm not totally heterosexual. Then the other end, there's the totally homosexual. Everything that they are about is about being with a person of the same sex. Here in the middle, which a lot of us have trouble understanding, are bisexuals. They can be attracted either way. And I can name some folks that I think were bisexuals. And so if you decide you're going to live the rest of your life as a heterosexual, that's a decision that's fairly easy. It's not difficult for the person in the bisexual. But the person who is totally, completely either heterosexual or homosexual, that can't change. How long would it take me to have poor Chuck here in therapy and convince him that he was homosexual?
Chuck, let me ask you.
It would take him a long time.
Let me ask the question the other way: is if homosexuality is a choice, is heterosexuality a choice?
Yeah, I think we do make our choices morally, sexually, and in every other way. We are created in the image of God, Dan, which means that we have a will, a volition. We can make our choices. And I think that this is something that we all have to come to grips with. This is one of the things that separates us from the natural kingdom. We do have the ability to choose our lifestyle, to make our decisions, and that we also are held accountable for those lifestyles. That's what our judicial system is all about, our court system. Everything is set up on the basis that we are free moral beings, that we have the responsibility as adults to make our decisions, and that we must live with the consequences thereby. And therefore we have certain laws and moral codes of right and wrong so that we as people can subscribe to a standard of righteousness. Not in sense of internal righteousness inside, but a sense of societal righteousness, a standard of right and wrong, knowing that men and women are free to make their choices. And therefore there are consequences when those choices are violated. So, yes, obviously we all have these choices, and we all are responsible for the choices that we make. And again, you know, for Marjorie, I just want to, you know, say that from my heart to yours, Marjorie, there's no animus, there's no hatred, there's no vilification here. And I too have friends that are homosexuals. It's not a matter of do we know people, do we have friends of people that are in that lifestyle? Does it mean that we walk on the other side of the street when we see one coming? No, I mean, it's nothing like that. It's a matter of what is going to be the moral standard of society. Will society have a moral code of conduct that they will hold their citizens to? Historically, in 2,000 years of Western civilization, we've said yes. There is a moral standard of conduct for societies. You look at what happened to the Grecian Empire, the Roman Empire, every great empire of the past. Once they get to a point where they allow hedonism to take over with no moral restraint at all upon society, those societies deteriorate and destroy themselves. So I think for the very sake of our future civilization, we have to maintain a moral standard for our society.
And one thing that, at least locally, our society has tolerated is the huge celebration on Pensacola Beach of the Gay Pride Weekend. It was just last weekend. We're going to talk a little bit more about that when In Focus returns just after this break. Back to In Focus, I'm Dan Thomas. This morning we're talking about homosexuality, certainly a broad topic that's always in the news, but over the last weekend we saw a number of homosexuals coming to our area to celebrate their own sexuality. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the video from years past and perhaps this year as well. You can see that a large number of homosexuals are attracted to the Pensacola Beach area, and the idea is that they come out, they celebrate their sexuality. Of course, this is something that's highly controversial in the Bible Belt as where we are. And joining me this morning, Pastor Chuck Baldwin and Marjorie Cumpston. And Marjorie, I want to give you a chance to talk a little bit about some of the things Chuck was addressing in the last segment. You can go ahead if you'd like to talk. I know there were some things that you wanted to respond to there.
Yes, I did. You know, I'm back to the issue of this is their lives. This is not their lifestyle. They did not choose this. This is not a choice. And my biggest problem with Jerry Falwell was his vindictiveness and his vengefulness. He was a bitter, angry man in many cases. Politician, yes, but please, please, I resent him using the term minister and pastor. That's not what ministers and pastors are about, and I don't care how many degrees he's got on his wall, that doesn't make him a decent human being.
Chuck, you were talking a little bit about tolerance in the last break, and you say that you don't want necessarily the government to get into people's bedrooms per se. What do you think they should do, or if anything should be done, about the video that we just saw, the people out on the beach?
Sure. First, let me respond. I was a member of Thomas Road Baptist Church for 2 years.
Understood.
He was my pastor, and I can assure you, Marjorie, he was a loving man of God. He had no hatred in his heart. Even some of the political enemies over the years, Jesse Jackson, even Hustler magazine publisher, these men gave grudging, respectful reverence to Jerry, recognizing that even though they differed on the issues, that they respected him as a man and believed him to be a man of integrity. So I certainly disagree with your characterization of Dr. Jerry.
Pastor Baldwin, I'm going to have to cut you off there. It looks like we're running a little short of time. We'll have more In Focus just after this. Good morning. Welcome back to In Focus. I'm sorry that's all the time we have. For more news, weather, and sports, tune in to Channel 3 right here at 5 o'clock. For now, have a good morning. I'm Dan Thomas.